Success! I just finished my load development for an upcoming match that I plan to shoot using this 6mm Creedmoor Howa 1500 that you've seen here on the channel. In fact, I wanted to put this rifle together for last year's Finlay Cup. That's the match that's coming up. And it's literally taken me a full year to get around to putting this rifle together. It wouldn't shoot initially, so I rebarreled it. It's been quite a journey. After the rebarreling with the suppressor, I put 5 shots into .288 inches. That was with Federal Premium factory ammunition. The only problem was the SD was about 25 FPS, which is something that you would expect with factory ammo. It's not tuned for this particular rifle. So here's what I want to lay out this time. For this match, I'm going to be loading about 600 rounds of practice ammo and about 200 rounds of match ammo. I might even practice more than that. And so therefore I have 3 requirements based on the match and based on how much practicing I'm going to be doing. Requirement number 1, sub half MOA performance consistently from a prone shooting setup indicative of what you'd have at a PRS match. Not locked up in a bench rest, but I'm confident putting 5 shots into a half inch at 100 yards with the rifle. Requirement number 2 is sub 10 FPS SD on the velocity. Why? Because the ranges at this match are going to go out to 1,000 yards and potentially just a little bit beyond that. And if I don't have a tight SD, sub 10 FPS, I'll have too much vertical dispersion. Third requirement, there's 2 reasons for this requirement. I want to load the practice ammo and the match ammo on a progressive reloading press. Why? Because 800 rounds total is going to be a large workload, and if I don't have to do that, if I can do it with progressive reloading equipment, I want to, and I have an upcoming story where I'm actually going to feature some equipment and the process as well. The second reason is Jim Finlay. He died a couple years back. This is now a memorial match in honor of him. He loaded his match ammo on a progressive. I thought that would be a nice touch to load it on the same equipment that he did with basically the same overall setup. Plus, it's going to make my life a lot easier. So in this video, what I want to do is walk you through this kind of unique setup that I've put together to do load development with the goal of loading this ammo on a progressive. So let's put a few rounds together, and then I'll talk about the results of my load development. Before we get into the process, let's talk components real quick. I'm using Starline brand new large rifle primer brass here. I've also got small rifle primer 6mm Creedmoor, which is kind of nice. Starline offers large and small primers for both 6mm Creedmoor and 6.5 Creedmoor. And what that allows you to do is to tailor your loads to whatever requirements you're working with. Larger primers can be more consistent in their ignition and extreme temperature spreads. Small primers can have more longevity for the primer pockets, and they can potentially have tighter SDs. I tested both. I did not find tighter SDs with the small primers, and so here I'm using the large primers. I could use either one for this application. I've found brand new Starline brass to shoot really well. I've got some insane results with 224 Valkyrie also that you're going to want to check out. I'm using Hodgdon H4350. This is right in the middle of that burn rate zone that you're going to want for either 6.5 Creedmoor or 6mm Creedmoor. Now I worked with Hornady 108 ELDMs and the Berger 105 hybrid targets. I found these hybrid target bullets to shoot just a little bit better in my rifle. And they've got a great G7 BC of .275, and I felt like this would be a great choice for this particular application. Using CCI BR2 bench rest primers. These are very consistent in their ignition. They work really well. They're reliably great components. What we're going to start with is something that I recommend you do anytime you're loading precision-oriented loads with brand new brass, and that's to take a full-length sizer die and run the expander ball through the case neck. And what I've got here is an RCBS 6mm Creedmoor full-length sizer set up for full-length sizing, but if we short stroke it, we're going to be able to just go through the case neck just to open that up a little bit. If you don't do this, there's 2 problems. First, you're going to have excessive bullet tension. You get the little rings on the bullet from the seating stem. Also, see this little flat spot there? That's just the case has been dinged around a little bit. That's going to come right out when we run the expander ball through, and that's another reason to go ahead and do this. Finally, this is going to set the stage for the next step. Now that we have perfectly uniform case necks, I'm going to take an L.E. Wilson chamfer tool. We're going to give it a quick spin on the inside and outside of the case necks, the case mouths right at the end of the neck there, so that when we seat bullets, we get real nice seating without any shaving. And then when we go to chamber the round, that's chamfering the outside of the case neck, will provide that extra smooth feeding. There we go. Next we're going to prime. I've got the Lee Auto Bench Prime set up here with the CCI BR2 primers. What I do like about this tool is the fact that it has extremely good leverage and feel. When the primer bottoms out in the primer pocket, I can feel that very distinctly. It's also very quick to load. That doesn't hurt. When I talked about load development targeted at loading on a progressive press, this powder measure setup is really one of the main considerations. This powder thrower is similar to the powder thrower that you'd find on a progressive, and therefore I wanted to load and shoot a bunch of ammo using this type of a powder measure to see where we would get a consistent velocity even with manual throwing, no trickling, no auto trickler, nothing. For bullet seating, I'm using an L.E. Wilson chamber type micrometer bullet seating die and a K&M arbor press. This type of die seats bullets very concentrically, and because of the micrometer adjustment, makes it very easy to adjust your bullet seating depth when you're doing load development. My bullet seating depth is 2.811, which is very close to the specification of 2.800 that all 308 derivative or 308 length cartridges have for a magazine. And I wanted to keep it close to 2.8 inches just because of feeding and reliability. And so my process here was to start with close to 2.8 inches, see if I can get good groupings. If I can, leave it there. If not, then experiment with bullet seating depth. And so far, this seating depth has worked really well. So there we go. 5 loaded cartridges. These are representative of the ammunition that I've loaded to perform this load development. And typically what I'll do is I'll start with a 10-shot load development string, a ladder test where you're incrementing the powder charge, say 0.2 or 0.4 grains, shoot the string to look at stable nodes in powder charge, and then do some optimal charge weight type testing around those nodes to see which node will give both small group sizes and an insensitivity to powder charge fluctuation. Now, I'd already performed a bunch of that testing with the initial incarnation of this rifle with the factory barrel. So what I did was I looked at where some of those nodes appeared, accuracy nodes and velocity nodes, and I did some targeted pinpoint testing around those. What I found was 40.6 grains of H4350 was a good starting point. And I got really good accuracy. Here's a 5-shot group with 0.353 inches in size, and that was shooting with a break, which is what I had thought I wanted to shoot in the match. But I had an SD of 14.1. So what I did was I looked at the velocity, and then I looked at the velocity of that Federal premium factory ammunition that shot really well. And you're up close to 3,000 feet per second, 2850, somewhere in that range when shooting the factory ammo. And I thought, I'm a little bit lower than that with my 40.6. So I upped the charge weight to 40.8. Now I just shot about an hour ago this group right here. This is 5 shots into 0.440, shooting off of a table. Relatively rapid with the suppressor, with the new trigger. That's a great result. If I can hold that type of accuracy, awesome. And I wasn't even trying that hard. The rifle's just shooting really well. Turns out I really like the suppressor. I like the way that it changes the recoil. More so than the brake. The brake, it blasts you in the face it can be kind of abrupt. I just find for me that the suppressor works really good and it enables me to concentrate on the shooting a little bit better. And here I've got sub half MOA. When I did some of the testing with the chronograph, I found this particular 40.8 grain load of H4350 with the Berger 105 hybrid target bullets to produce, I shot 2 5-shot strings in a row. One was 6.8 FPS and one was 7.8 FPS. Now we're talking. We've got sub half MOA accuracy. We've got sub 10 FPS SD on our velocity, and we threw it with a drum type powder measure. Just a thrower, not throwing and trickling, not using the fancy auto trickler, which I will use and I've used for parts of my load development in the original incarnation. So for this particular scenario, I'm feeling really good about this load. The brand new Starline brass is working great. The once fired brass shoots just as good. So if I go through all of this brass in my practice and resize it, full length size it, and load it again, I know it's going to perform really well. And I have a high degree of confidence that this ammo will load really well on a progressive press and will continue to shoot sub half MOA and give me that sub 10 FPS SD on my velocity. The 224 Valkyrie ammunition that I load with 70 grain RDF bullets from Nosler on a progressive press, shoot quarter MOA and have around a 10 FPS SD, but that has more to do with the load development on that side. So I've been able to get this to work before. I'm confident that it will work in this case. So that's a quick tour of my bulk match ammo load development process. Stay tuned for the progressive loading follow-up story. That means you're going to want to be subscribed with notifications. Make sure you click on that bell. Also, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I'd really like to know, what do you think? Do you have a particular match load development methodology that you'd like to discuss? Is any of this consistent with what you do before a match? Please drop a comment. We'll start a discussion. Don't forget, I got Ultimate Reloader t-shirts at the store. I'm on Patreon, and we got that first link in the video description, a link to a more fully featured article with more data and pictures. Until next time, happy shooting and happy reloading.